Purple Enel is the best deck in OP15 right now, but the way most players are playing it is pretty wrong, and the reason for that is simple. People think this is an aggro deck, and aggro decks win by taking your opponent's life as fast as possible. But that's definitely not what makes Enel strong. In this video, I'm going to break down what actually makes this deck so powerful, the biggest mistakes I see players making, and how you should be thinking about your turns if you want to win consistently with Enel. One of the first steps is to look beyond Enel as just an aggressive deck. I think its primary strength is all of the value engine pieces that it has. And a lot of this value comes from your one-cost bodies. A lot of people treat these as kind of throwaway cards that only really get value in the early game so that you can maximize your leader ability, but they're kind of the core of how the deck wins. Every time you attack with a one-cost body, you're effectively forcing your opponent into a really detrimental trade for them. Because if they counter with one card, that means that you just exchanged your body that replaces itself and therefore has a cost of 0 for an entire card. If they take a life, you're progressing towards winning the game. And then on top of that, you're potentially using the one-cost body as a blocker that your opponent might swing into. So you're getting a ton of value for something that costs you effectively nothing. And that's where Enel starts to snowball in strength. It's not just through raw power, but you're getting small, consistent value over the course of multiple turns. There are really 3 main ways that the one-cost bodies are able to fit into your curve. The first is the typical on your opening turn. Most of the time, the correct play is just to put down as many one-cost bodies as possible, even if that means going to 0 Dawn. And that might feel wrong at first, but it's actually totally fine, because after you use your leader ability, you're still able to play a 3 cost on turn 2 and a 6 cost on turn 3. So you're not really falling behind, you're just setting up already this strong engine that I mentioned earlier. The second way you put out a 1-cost body is by playing Porsche. If you're using a build with Porsche is generally your best turn 2 play. And if you can't combo it with something like a Holly, or if you're playing a 3-cost Heat, then you're just going to end up playing a 1-cost with it. That keeps your board super wide, and your value continues to progress, especially if Porsche is also replacing itself off of its search. So then you're just establishing 2 bodies for the cost of nothing, basically. And the third way that you're going to get 1 cost out is by using your leader ability. I think this is one that people miss out on a lot, but you really want to consider using the 1 active Dawn you get to establish a standing 1 cost, like an Ohm, or to play down Shura and clear your opponent's 1 cost characters. The decision between attaching Dawn or establishing more bodies is extremely important, because that extra damage might feel really good in the moment from attaching the Dawn, such as forcing your opponent to take a double attack Holly. But having a guaranteed leader target for the next turn is often worth more in the long term, especially because your opponent might just be giving you the double attack for an 8. And if you choose to go 9, and they would have taken an 8 anyways, you're just losing out on potential board presence for no real reason. Not thinking about these kind of trade-offs is where you're going to start losing value. The second major mistake that I see is playing Enel too aggressively. A lot of players treat this deck like its goal is just to take all of your opponent's life as fast as possible. And while that will win you games, it's probably not the most consistent way to win. Because when all you're trying to do is rush your opponent down and take advantage of their lack of counter, if they do have the counter, sometimes this just gives them a good opportunity to stabilize and run you out of resources. Enel actually has so much potential for board control, and that's something that you want to take complete advantage of. Instead of just attacking life every turn, you should be looking for as many opportunities as possible to efficiently clear your opponent's board. Especially because you have so many reduction pieces like Lightning Beast Kitten or Ohm, sometimes you just get a lot more value by poking at bodies. And as I discussed earlier, a lot of the time I want to prioritize taking cards out of my opponent's hand as opposed to just taking their lives. A few things happen when you remove their bodies. You extend the game, you give your own cards more opportunities to generate value, and you create more turns where your small bodies can continue attacking without the potential of being contested. And that's how Enel really wins. Not by ending the game as quickly as possible, but by creating positions where your opponent has a really difficult time to recover or find room for a lethal. Because if your opponent is just removing your board every single turn, they're not really putting themselves into a winning position, particularly when your pieces on board are just replacing themselves in your hand. A third mistake is just generally misunderstanding how the tempo in One Piece works, and as a result of that, how you should be swinging at your opponent's characters and at their board. I think tempo a lot of the time is something that people feel, but they don't necessarily completely consider it in the broader picture of the game. Usually in games, they're based on draws and potentially coin flips. There's going to be one person who's in a winning position, and there's going to be one person who's in a losing position. And a lot of the way that you calculate your position is based on the cards in hand, your characters on board, and your number of life. And considering all of these together is how you understand tempo and understand how far you are from closing out the game, or potentially from losing the game. A really common mistake that I see from Enel players that exemplifies this is the player going first is generally slightly advantaged, and they're going to put down the first 6 cost Enel. The issue is if they attack with that Enel after their opponent has also established a 6 cost Enel, then they're in a position to get double cleared, because your opponent will Divine Departure or Gamma Knife your active Enel, and then be able to rest it with Mamaragin and swing over it multiple times until they eventually remove it. And then they can use their leader ability and stack all their Dawn on their active Enel and swing over your rested Enel that you attacked with. And this is a huge swing in tempo, because now they're effectively the first player to have played an Enel, and you're going to be having wasted 2 turns, essentially. This is just a full board reset, except now your opponent is ahead, and they are currently the winning player. And now you have to work back from that deficit. And this is all because of the choice to make one attack. Like, small mistakes like that are not just costing you a few cards in hand, they're going to cost you the entire board. And that's why it's important to be extremely cognizant of tempo while playing Enel. So, playing Enel is not going to just be about curving out. Although there is somewhat of a curve of playing 1 cost bodies, then playing Holly or Porsche if you have it, and then playing 6 costs, a lot of the time even just doing those things is not correct. I have found myself frequently choosing to play 1 cost bodies on my second turn over a Holly because I find that I'm looking for other cards and I want to establish a better board presence before I start committing to Holly. A lot of the time the Holly can just get instant removed, but it can become more awkward if you wait till later. So it's all about considering exactly what you're expecting from your opponent on their subsequent turn, and then making your choice based on that, as opposed to just, in this predicament, you should be doing this, which is frequently the way that guides are written about a lot of the decks that have existed previously. Enel isn't broken because it's fast. It's broken because it turns small advantages into inevitable wins. And if you're playing it like a simple deck that purely attacks leader as much as possible and maybe keeps a few things locked with some lightning dragons, you might be missing the reason why it actually is so strong. If this helped you understand the deck better, let me know what you want to see next, whether it's another matchup, another deck, or more breakdowns like this.